Okay, so I put the hatch, the lock in, and fiddled and farted, and basically one of the things I needed to do was to, I'll show you, I'll pop this out here. This lip that the seal runs in, I had to cut back about 1/16 of an inch in the center third area, and then it would close cleanly, and it takes a bit of pressure to close. Right now, haha, can't even close it. That'll get better over time. There we go. Sorry about the jerky camera, but anyway, when it's back in place, I've got all the edges profiled. I got a 1/4 inch gap on the bottom here to match the door gaps up front, and then I decided to go to 3/16 on the sides, tighten it up a little bit on the sides, because that's the way it is across the top. So it's 3/16 all down the sides, and then a 1/4 inch at the bottom. So I spent a lot of time getting these edges. Had to sand down the bottom. This corner here is a bit problematic, getting it to align on both sides, but this side's perfect. But it's also because the metalwork on this side is a little bit better. As I was explaining it, this is the side that's got the V on it. The other side doesn't have the correct V. So I also cut back. Well, you can see if I peel this away. I also cut back the edge of the tailgate light there, so that it was running parallel to the incorrect metal on the body. So anyway, it's all looking good now. You won't notice it when it's done, that's for sure. And I'm going to take this hatch off, the tailgate off, and I will start putting the Kevlar reinforced filler to extend the edges out where I've put the tape on there, and then I can start getting everything dialed in, and then I'll test fit it a few times, and then I'll prime it. Well, here's the result of several days of hard work. Basically extended all the edges out, and sanded and filled until they were perfect. So I've got new material. It's dark green, it's hard to see maybe with the camera, but starting about 1/3 of the way in, and then running down, and then boom to the bottom. So I've got all the edges lined up and got the gaps where I want them, and the back is beauty. And then on this side over here, same thing, a little closer in, I'm sort of jammed in, but the top's good, and then all the way down here to the bottom again. It's I got my 3/16 along the edges here, and in the back, and then I got a 1/4 inch. So I'm going to prime it and then high build it. It's all sanded out, so ready to go. So it's starting to look good. I'll get high build on it next and start tuning it a little bit more, but it'll be done by tomorrow night for sure. So it took quite a bit more fiddling with this than I'd bargained for, just because you know, that there's a lot of surfaces, a lot of curves, and I just wasn't really happy with the way the you know, the stock material, this carbon fiber material was finished. So I ended up not just redoing the gaps, but doing a lot of filling. I'll show you on the other side in a sec. But you know, it's the back is really good now. It's everything is, you know, fiberglass and carbon fiber parts always have a bit of a wobble to them. They're never quite as straight as steel parts are. The only problem I have is I've finished this now. I've done a number of passes of high build and I've locked it. The surface is slightly pitted and slightly rough because the gun settings on the last pass were wrong, and it was going on rough, and I rushed it a bit. So I've sanded it down as far as I dare, and I'll I'll put the sealer on. I'll put a couple coats of the epoxy thinned reduced epoxy sealer on it, and then wet sand it, and I think I should have it. I should be good. It's not like the surface isn't flat. It's just that there's some little micro pits in it where the high build primer was sort of splattered on, and little bits of air got stuck underneath the paint, I think. So anyway, that should work out. So I'll just flip it over here. Bear with me. It's only 5 pounds, so I'm just grunting that I've got it at a weird angle. But so what I did is all these edges along here were sort of rough finished. The back side was like rough cut, and so I've had to, like, you know, put filler along the edges and then bevel it to the shape I want and make it pretty. Same thing all down the insides, and you know, like these little ears here, I've had to spend time tapering them and shaping them exactly the way I want them. And then remember, I'd built up this lip here in the center, and what I've done is I've then profiled it back so it doesn't look quite so different than the rest of it. So if you zoom in, not zoom in, but if you just look at it on the edge, it looks decent. So this is done. So as I said, this may be the first part that I go to base and clear on. Either that or the sunroof panel, which is the smallest panel. I'm going to figure out. I've ordered some new guns, and I'm going to have to play with them until I get them to work really well. And you know, I talked to the paint guy today from Southern Polyurethanes, and he said, you know, you can actually go straight to base on top of the high build, as long as you haven't cut through the base metal. And of course there's no base metal on here, but I haven't cut through even to the base epoxy. And he says, well, you can just, you know, once it's sanded down, you can shoot the base right on top of that. But as I said, I'm not going to do that on the car. I'm going to definitely shoot a couple of thinned coats of epoxy as a sealer, which is best practice, and then I will wet sand that just to make sure that there's no junk in it and it's absolutely smooth, and then I'll shoot base clear, and that'll have to go through the whole car. So I'm actually going to do the bumpers, the carbon fiber bumpers next, just so I'm finished all the sanding and all the dirty stuff. Then this whole garage, it's going to get completely cleaned out, scrubbed, power washed, and then I'm going to prep this thing for a really high quality paint environment, and then I'll do the base clear over the next 3 weeks. So that's it.